Picture this. You're 30,000 feet in the air. Suddenly, both engines explode. Complete silence follows. No power, no thrust. Just gravity pulling you down toward one of the most crowded cities on Earth. You have 208 seconds to make a decision that will either save 155 lives or end them all. This isn't a movie. This isn't a simulation. This happened on January 15, 2009, over New York City. And what happened next defied every rule in aviation. This is the story of Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger and the miracle on the Hudson. Welcome back to Silent Warriors, where we bring you the untold stories of everyday heroes who faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Today's story will leave you speechless. On a freezing winter morning in New York City, 155 people boarded U.S. Airways Flight 1549, heading to Charlotte, North Carolina. It was supposed to be a routine flight, a boring commute, just another Thursday, but in less than 4 minutes, these passengers would find themselves in the middle of one of aviation's greatest emergencies, and their survival would depend entirely on the split-second decisions of one man. This is Captain Chesley Sullenberger, a veteran pilot with over 40 years of flying experience, a safety expert, a glider pilot, a man who had spent his entire life preparing for a moment he hoped would never come. But on this day, every hour of training, every simulation, every lesson learned would be put to the ultimate test. What he did next rewrote the rules of aviation. Let's dive in. January 15, 2009, LaGuardia Airport, New York City. Temperature, 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Clear skies. Perfect flying weather. Captain Chesley Sullenberger, known to everyone as Sully, arrived at the airport that morning like he had done thousands of times before. At 57 years old, he was the epitome of a professional pilot, former fighter pilot, safety consultant, a man who didn't just fly planes, he understood every mechanical system, every emergency procedure, every possible scenario that could go wrong. His first officer that day was Jeffrey Skiles, an experienced pilot in his own right with over 15,000 flight hours. Together, they conducted their standard pre-flight checks on the Airbus A320. Everything looked perfect. The plane was in excellent condition. Weather was clear. It was going to be a textbook flight. At 3:24 p.m., U.S. Airways Flight 1549 pushed back from Gate 23. On board, 150 passengers and 5 crew members. Families heading home, business travelers, people with plans, dreams, families waiting for them. None of them had any idea that in the next 6 minutes, their lives would hang in the balance. The plane taxied to runway 4. Captain Sully advanced the throttles. The Airbus accelerated down the runway. At 3:25 p.m., the wheels lifted off the ground. Flight 1549 was airborne, climbing steadily over the Bronx, heading north along the Hudson River corridor, before turning southwest toward Charlotte. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. For exactly 90 seconds, at 3:27 p.m., at an altitude of just 2,800 feet, Captain Sully saw them. A flock of Canada geese, large birds, flying in formation, directly in the flight path. There was no time to react, no time to maneuver. Whoom, whoom. The impacts were instantaneous. Birds were sucked into both engines. The sound was deafening like explosions. Passengers screamed. The smell of burning birds filled the cabin. And then, silence. Both engines lost thrust. The instruments showed catastrophic failure. The Airbus A320, carrying 155 souls, was now a 160,000-pound glider, falling from the sky over the most densely populated city in America. In the cockpit, warning alarms screamed. Red lights flashed across every panel. The plane shook violently. First Officer Skiles was flying at the moment of impact, but both pilots immediately knew they were in a situation that no commercial pilot ever wants to face. Total engine failure at low altitude over a major city. Sully's voice came over the intercom, calm and steady. This is the captain. Brace for impact. Those 5 words sent chills down every spine on that aircraft. Flight attendants immediately began shouting instructions. Brace, brace, heads down, stay down. But in the cockpit, Sully wasn't panicking. His mind shifted into a mode that only decades of training and experience could provide. He took control of the aircraft from Skiles and began running through options at lightning speed. Sully immediately radioed air traffic control. Hit birds. We've lost thrust in both engines. We're turning back towards LaGuardia. Air traffic controller Patrick Harton responded instantly. Okay, yeah. You need to return to LaGuardia? Turn left heading of a 220. But as Sully turned the aircraft, he glanced at the instruments. Altitude 2,700 feet and dropping. Airspeed decreasing rapidly. Distance to LaGuardia 4 miles. He ran the calculations in his head. They were too low, too slow, too far. In aviation, there's a concept called the impossible turn. It's when a pilot loses engine power shortly after takeoff and attempts to turn back to the runway. It's called impossible because most pilots who attempt it don't make it. The physics are brutal. When you turn, you lose altitude faster. You lose airspeed. You need power to maintain the turn. Without engines, every second counts. Sully knew this. He had studied crashes. He had reviewed accidents. He knew that trying to glide back to LaGuardia could result in the plane crashing into buildings, homes, schools. The Bronx was directly below them. Thousands of people on the ground. Air traffic control offered him runway 13, Cactus, 1549. If we can get it to you, do you want to try to land runway 13? Sully's response was immediate. We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson. Patrick Harton, the controller, quickly offered another option: Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. Much closer, just across the river. Okay, what do you need to land? Harton asked. Sully considered it for a fraction of a second. Teterboro was closer, but they were still too low. If he turned toward Teterboro and didn't make it, the plane would crash into densely populated neighborhoods in New Jersey. More lives at risk. More people on the ground. His mind raced through the calculations. Altitude 1,500 feet. Airspeed 185 knots. Glide ratio of the Airbus A320 approximately 17:1. That meant for every 1,000 feet of altitude, he could glide about 3 miles. They had maybe 1,500 feet. That gave them about 4 to 5 miles of gliding distance. Teterboro was 7 miles away. They wouldn't make it. Sully's voice came over the radio, calm but firm. We're gonna be in the Hudson. In that moment, Captain Sullenberger made a decision that no commercial airline pilot had ever successfully executed before. He was going to attempt a water landing in the Hudson River, not a ditching, which usually ends in catastrophe. A controlled landing, on water, with 155 people on board. The Hudson River stretched out below them, a narrow ribbon of icy water cutting through Manhattan and New Jersey. It was their only option, but water landings are incredibly dangerous. If the nose dips too low, the plane cartwheels and breaks apart. If one wing hits first, the plane spins and disintegrates. If the speed is too high, the impact is like hitting concrete. Sully had to get everything perfect. The angle, the speed, the pitch. One mistake, and everyone dies. First Officer Skiles was frantically going through the emergency checklist, trying to restart the engines. Got any ideas? Sully asked. Actually not, Skiles replied. They were out of options, out of altitude, out of time. Sully focused entirely on flying the plane. He needed to keep the nose up, maintain the right glide speed around 130 knots, line up with the river, avoid the George Washington Bridge, which loomed ahead, avoid the ferry boats crossing the river, find a clear stretch of water. In the cabin, flight attendants Donna Dent, Doreen Welch, and Sheila Dale shouted commands: brace, 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 heads down, stay down. Passengers grabbed their knees. Some prayed, some cried, some sat in stunned silence. Everyone knew what was coming. Outside the cockpit windows, the river rushed up to meet them. Buildings blurred past on both sides. Sully's hands were steady on the controls. His voice calm. Brace for impact. Altitude, 500 feet. 400 feet. 300 feet. The plane skimmed over the George Washington Bridge with just seconds to spare. 200 feet. Sully pulled back slightly on the yoke, raising the nose. 100 feet. He could see the ripples on the water now. 50 feet. Got flaps too, Skiles called out. Flaps too, Sully confirmed. The nose was up. The wings were level. Airspeed, 125 knots. This was it. At exactly 3:31 p.m., 208 seconds after the bird strike, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 touched down on the Hudson River. The impact was violent. Wham! The rear of the plane hit first, absorbing the initial shock. Water exploded upward in massive sheets. The fuselage shuddered. Overhead bins burst open. Passengers were thrown forward against their seatbelts. But the plane held together. Sully had done it. The nose stayed up. The wings stayed level. The plane didn't cartwheel. It didn't break apart. It slid across the water like a giant surfboard, decelerating rapidly, throwing up walls of spray on both sides. Inside, passengers were screaming, but they were alive. The plane finally came to a stop, floating in the middle of the Hudson River, directly between Manhattan and New Jersey. Water immediately began pouring into the cabin through the rear cargo hold. The plane was sinking, but it was floating. For now, in the cockpit, Sully and Skiles quickly secured the aircraft. Sully's first words, "That wasn't as bad as I thought." But there was no time to celebrate. They had to get everyone off the plane. Now, Sully grabbed the PA system. "This is the captain. Evacuate." Flight attendants threw open the emergency exits. Doors popped. Slides deployed. Passengers began pouring out onto the wings. The water was 36 degrees Fahrenheit, just above freezing. Anyone who fell in had minutes before hypothermia set in. The flight attendants worked like machines, directing passengers, helping those who were injured or panicking, making sure everyone got out. "Move! Move! Keep moving!" they shouted. Some passengers slid down into the water. Others stood on the wings, balancing on the slippery surface as the plane slowly settled deeper. Icy water lapped at their feet. The current pushed against them. And then, something remarkable happened. New York City's ferry system became the heroes of the rescue. Within minutes of the plane hitting the water, ferry captains saw what had happened. Without hesitation, they turned their boats toward the sinking aircraft. The first to arrive was the Thomas Jefferson, a commuter ferry operated by Captain Vince Lombardi. He maneuvered his massive vessel right up to the wing of the aircraft. Passengers began climbing aboard. Ferry workers reached down, pulling people up from the wings, from the water, from the inflatable slides. More ferries arrived. The Governor Thomas H. Keene, the Moira Smith, the Yogi Berra. Tugboats rushed to the scene. Nipped and Coast Guard helicopters appeared overhead. Divers jumped into the freezing water to help those who had fallen in. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Every boat captain, every ferry worker, every first responder knew what to do. They had trained for this. New York City had learned from 9/11s. They were ready. On the wings of the sinking plane, passengers huddled together, shivering, terrified, but alive. Some were injured, some were in shock, but one by one, they were pulled to safety. In the cabin, flight attendants did one final sweep, checking every row, every seat, every bathroom, making sure no one was left behind. Captain Sully walked through the plane twice, checking every row, every seat, every compartment. He was the last person to leave the aircraft. By 3:55 p.m., just 24 minutes after the crash, all 155 people were off the plane and accounted for. Not a single life was lost. 78 people were treated for minor injuries, mostly hypothermia, broken bones, and cuts. But everyone survived. Every single person. The news spread across the world in minutes. A passenger plane had crashed into the Hudson River in the middle of New York City, but everyone survived. It was being called a miracle. The miracle on the Hudson. The images were iconic. the Airbus A320 floating in the river, passengers standing on the wings, ferries surrounding it, helicopters overhead, the Manhattan skyline in the background. It looked like a scene from a movie, but it was real, and at the center of it all was Captain Chesley Sullenberger. When Sully was finally pulled aboard a ferry, he was calm, quiet. He wasn't celebrating. He was still processing what had happened. "I'm not a hero," he would later say. "I was just doing my job." But the world disagreed. The National Transportation Safety Board launched an immediate investigation. They wanted to know, was landing in the Hudson really the right decision? Could Sully have made it back to LaGuardia or Teterboro? Simulations were run. Computer models were tested. Pilots attempted the same scenario in flight simulators. The results were clear. Every single simulation that attempted to return to an airport ended in a crash. Every single one. But there was a catch in the simulations. The pilots knew what was coming. They started the emergency procedure immediately. They had no reaction time, no surprise, no human delay. When investigators added just 35 seconds of reaction time, the time it took for a human to process the emergency and make a decision, the simulations failed every time. Sully had made the right call. The only call. Landing in the Hudson was the only option that would have saved everyone. But the investigation wasn't over. The SBS wanted to know everything. Why did both engines fail completely? Could the pilots have done anything differently? Was there any error on Sully's part? The cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder were recovered from the plane. They revealed the entire sequence of events. The bird strike happened at 3 hours 27 minutes and 11 seconds p.m. By 3 hours 27 minutes and 32 seconds p.m., just 21 seconds later, Sully had communicated the emergency to air traffic control. By 3 hours 30 minutes and 43 seconds p.m., the plane was in the water. Total time from bird strike to landing, 208 seconds, 3.5 minutes. In that time, Sully had assessed the damage, attempted to restart the engines, considered 3 different airports, calculated glide distances, ruled out all other options, communicated with air traffic control, prepared the cabin for impact, executed a near-perfect water landing, and saved 155 lives. The investigation also revealed something else. Sully's background as a glider pilot had been crucial. Gliders don't have engines. Pilots who fly gliders learn to calculate distances, wind, altitude, and landing options constantly. They learn to feel the aircraft, to understand exactly how far they can glide with the energy they have. This skill, developed over years of flying gliders, had been the difference between life and death. Then SPI's final report concluded that Captain Sullenberger's decision-making, skill, and experience were the primary reasons all 155 people survived. The official report praised the cockpit crew, the cabin crew, the ferry operators, and the first responders. It was a team effort, but it started with one man's decision in 208 seconds. Captain Chesley Sullenberger became an instant American hero. He was invited to President Obama's inauguration just days after the crash. He appeared on every major news network. He testified before Congress. He wrote a best-selling book. And in 2016, Tom Hanks portrayed him in the movie Sully, directed by Clint Eastwood. But Sully never sought the spotlight. He was uncomfortable with the attention. He insisted that he was simply doing what any well-trained pilot would do. "We were just doing what we were trained to do," he said. "We never gave up." The passengers of Flight 1549 never forgot him. Many stayed in touch. They formed a bond, a group of people who had faced death together and survived. They call themselves the Miracle on the Hudson Survivors. First Officer Jeffrey Skiles returned to flying and eventually became a captain himself. The flight attendants Donna Dent, Doreen Welch, and Sheila Dale were hailed as heroes for their calm professionalism during the evacuation. The ferry boat captains received awards and recognition, but perhaps the most profound impact was on aviation safety itself. The incident led to changes in pilot training, more emphasis on decision-making under pressure, more training for water landings, better bird strike prevention at airports, improved communication between pilots and air traffic control during emergencies. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 became a case study taught at every major flight school in the world. It's used to train pilots on how to handle the impossible, how to stay calm, how to trust your training, how to make the right decision when every option looks bad. So what can we learn from Captain Sullenberger's story? First, preparation matters. Sully had over 40 years of flying experience. He had trained for emergencies his entire career. He had studied accidents. He had flown gliders. He had done the work. When the moment came, his training took over. Second, stay calm under pressure. In the most terrifying moment of his life, Sully's voice never wavered. He didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He assessed the situation and acted. Panic would have killed everyone. Calm saved them. Third, trust your judgment. Air traffic control offered him runways. The computer simulations later said he should have tried to make it back. But Sully trusted his gut. He trusted his calculations. He made the call, and he was right. Fourth, teamwork saves lives. Sully couldn't have done it alone. First Officer Skiles worked the checklists. The flight attendants evacuated the cabin. The ferry captains rescued the passengers. The first responders pulled people from the water. It was a team effort from start to finish. And finally, never give up. At 2,800 feet, with both engines gone, over one of the most crowded cities on Earth, it would have been easy to give up, to accept that this was the end. But Sully didn't give up. He fought for every second. He used every bit of skill, training, and experience he had. And he won. On January 15, 2009, 155 people boarded a plane expecting a routine flight. Instead, they found themselves in the middle of one of aviation's greatest emergencies. But because of one man's skill, experience, and unshakable calm, they all went home that night. Captain Chesley, Sully Sullenberger, didn't set out to be a hero. He was just doing his job. But in doing that job with excellence, with preparation, with courage, he saved 155 lives. He proved that even in the most impossible situations, with the right training, the right mindset, and the right decisions, miracles can happen. The miracle on the Hudson wasn't just luck. It was skill. It was preparation. It was a lifetime of dedication to a craft. And it's a reminder that heroes aren't born. They're made. One decision at a time, one challenge at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Captain Sullenberger is a silent warrior, a man who faced the impossible and won. And his story will inspire generations of pilots, professionals, and everyday people to prepare, to train, to stay calm, and to never give up. Because you never know when your 208 seconds will come. If this story inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe to Silent Warriors for more incredible, true stories of courage, heroism, and survival. Drop a comment below and let us know, what would you have done in Sully's situation? And remember, heroes aren't born, they're made. Stay strong, stay prepared, and never give up. Until next time, this is Silent Warriors.